Vladimir Putin conducted a meeting with Valery Gerasimov, chief of the general staff in Russia, saying that the Burevestnik missile, this new weapon that Putin had intimated about earlier this season, has now been unveiled. It is a nuclear-powered missile with unlimited range. They claim and they say, Putin and Gerasimov, that this missile can evade any missile defense system that currently exists anywhere in the world. Given your experience in diplomacy and dealing with military affairs, why is Russia now coming out with this? Is this sending a kind of message?
Well, it's not a great surprise. It's been signaled for some time that it was coming, this new missile, and Putin has referred to it. And as far as I understand, the tests were completed last year, most of the tests. I mean, maybe there's more tests, but it's been tested, and it's now for distribution to the armed forces. And I mean, the significance of it is really because of the threat by Trump to allow tomahawks to be exported to Ukraine, and for those tomahawks to target deep inside Russia. He did make a suggestion. Trump made a suggestion then afterwards that he hadn't given permission for these missiles to be used, or I mean, he wasn't talking about Tomahawk, but any missile, long, medium-range missile, to be used deep in the depths of Russia. However, the Wall Street Journal unusually pushed back against Trump on this issue, and they said, listen, I mean, actually, the targeting details have already been passed. A list, a stack of targets has been given to the Ukrainians, mostly refineries and some weapons manufacturers. These have been given to the Ukrainians as they already hold them. And so the authorization to use missiles for that purpose has been given. I have to say that it's important to understand that we saw recently Storm Shadow, a British-French missile was fired, or claims that it was fired into pre-1914 Russia. And that they're saying that this is, a use of a missile deep into the depths of Russia. However, the reality is that because Storm Shadow and indeed Taurus and all these European missiles actually have American components in it, that they're only really able to fire them with American permission. So they're not actually totally independent or autonomous, as Trump is trying to present at the moment. It's not us doing this, we're not doing anything. It's the Europeans. They're going to buy them from us. We're going to send them the weapons. And what they do with them, who knows? Maybe they'll send them to Ukraine. It's not quite like that. It's not quite like that at all. So the main purpose was that the Americans, particularly his team, Trump team, I mean the hawks in it, Rubio and Kellogg and the others that are hawkish about Russia, and they're a majority, thought that that the Tomahawk, the threat of the Tomahawks, was likely to persuade Putin to agree to a ceasefire here and now on what is the contact line. Here it is right now on the contact line. A proposition that Putin has rejected consistently time and time and time again. But somehow some of his team believed possibly that just the mere threat of the Tomahawks was sufficient to persuade a change of opinion, and that therefore this was a worthwhile prospect for Trump to go, and that somehow Putin would abdicate and concede his position on this, which wasn't very likely. So, why did Trump say that? I mean, why did he say what he knows is not acceptable. Witkoff has had 5 meetings now with Putin in which he's brought back the same message. Well, we have to think about what's going on with that. So in sum, this Burevestnik is intended to say to Trump and his team, look, if you think you have leverage over me by threatening tomahawks, forget it, because if you want to play that game, we can play it back at you, and we can do it better because we have this missile which is nuclear powered, can fly at low altitude, high altitude, is going to be almost impossible to shoot down. So you want to take out some place in Russia, we can take out the same, and you won't even know the direction from which it comes at you. So this, I think, was really just a response. And he sent Dmitriev to Dmitry and had some meetings with US officials. And I think what I hear from Russia basically is that Dmitriev is really quite trusted by Putin. However, in the present situation, this trip to the US, even he could do absolutely nothing. Dmitriev concluded in his report that the anti-Russian sentiments in the American establishment are just too strong, and there are very few truly independent figures left there. And it was, the Russian commentators added that even Hexteth showed no interest in a dialogue with Belarusov, who's the defense minister, Russian defense minister, and made it clear that he considers Russia a strategic adversary that must be fought. And yet, for Moscow, Belarusov was a figure who could play really a positive role in the current situation, in their view. But that's not going to happen. So Dmitriev's mission was to establish whether Trump was completely co-opted by the neocon European gang. And the answer apparently is yes. So I think that what we're seeing there, expanding a bit from going on from that missile, is the sort of sense that this whole effort, as it stands, to establish a relationship between Russia and the United States, a political, diplomatic relationship, a normalization between these two states, has practically failed, at least for the foreseeable future. And so I think there will be less talks and less talks of meetings either as a consequence. In fact, I can't see any reason to have a meeting now. I don't think it's really practical or possible, or it would be very productive. And I say that because, although some commentators I see here have been in the West have been saying, well, these sanctions that Trump has imposed on 2 major Russian oil producers, they're not going to damage the Russian economy, and they shouldn't be taken too seriously. And to a certain extent, I mean, that's true. However, it's the political ramifications. These sanctions are, I think you could say, are serious but not grave. I mean, they will cause some disadvantage to the Russian economy. That's true. However, they're not going to fundamentally change it or damage it or change its course. But it's the political consequence, because one of the understandings that came out of Alaska, the key understanding, was that somehow Trump would hold off on Lindsey Graham and the others wanting to impose sanctions on Russia, and that he would give Putin a bit of space and he would hold off on that. And that was one, if you like, understanding. And the other one, which really is the red line, was that, no, there is not going to be a frozen conflict along the present contact lines. That is not happening, and we will not accept it. So both of those red lines were really being broken by the proposal that Trump said, well, we want to freeze it, a ceasefire right away, immediately, here and now, for ceasefire along the contact lines. And also, we're putting sanctions on you too. So, all right, the Russians may say, well, they aren't actually red lines in the way tomahawks might have been red lines, but they were red lines, pink lines if you prefer, but they were red lines for Russia. And those have just been completely broken. So I don't see any basis or any real prospect, therefore, unless there was a dramatic change. But the message is clear. The message, and the Russians understand it, that when Trump proposed this idea, the message came from deep inside the United States in the sort of dark money quarters of the US, and they said, no, you will not normalize with Russia. That's not on the cards. You may not do that. And so he had, and you could see from the sort of speed, he had to sort of cancel it, just like that. Oh, we all thought it was going ahead, and then suddenly, no, it's been postponed. No, it's canceled. And I think that's it for the time being. And as I said with Dmitriev, I mean, the message he came back with actually, it looks as if Trump has no agency. I mean, he can speak and he can say things, and he can say, oh, yes, it would be wonderful, there are lots of economic prospects, but actually, can he deliver a political settlement? And the other aspect, of course, of this, which is the sort of propaganda, the psyops coming out of the West, because the psyops of the West has consistently tried to present what's going on as just a sort of jigsaw puzzle where one piece of territory is swapped for another, and maybe Kherson or Kharkov, there can be a sort of less territory. But that's a nonsense, because Kherson and Kharkov were included as part of Russian territory in the Russian constitution. What is more, the peoples of those oblasts voted. They voted to be Russian. I mean, that's it, full stop. That's what they voted for. I don't think there was any prospect. If this is what the team was thinking in the White House, there was any prospect that he was going to really sort of give away part of Russia to Ukraine, or even sort of half give it away in that sense. So it was, I think, really not the case. And the talk, that Russia is really in trouble and Putin is in trouble, is equally just propaganda by the West to try and weaken Putin amongst his own people. Of course there's frustration. Of course there's a certain degree. People would have liked the war to go faster, and there is naturally divisions of opinion. Is it better to sort of decommission the energy system? Is it better to attack logistics supplies and trains? Is it better just to wait and complete the encirclement, which they have got now, the encirclement of 10,000 Ukrainian troops in both around Pekrovsk and then adjacent to Pekrovsk. So 5,000 in one, 5,000 another, 10,000 Ukrainian troops, and they've been given the choice: either surrender or you will be destroyed. And at the moment, I saw that the Russians are saying they're proceeding with the destruction because, as usual, I think Zelensky said no retreat. So there's a big shift on the ground. Which is the tactical way to go? Is reasonable? It's a valid debate in Russia. Should it be more, quicker action on the ground around the borders with the Dnieper, or should it be more action against the electrical and gas supplies? I mean, who knows? Only the people on the ground can really tell that. But when I was in St. Petersburg not so long ago, a few months, a couple of months ago, 3 months or so ago, people were very clear. I'm not talking about the elites or the military or anything like that. Just, St. Petersburg is the sort of liberal heart of Russia. And they all were absolutely plain. They said, look, we've spent blood getting to where we are now. We've spent our sons' blood, and we're not going to accept another Minsk deceit imposed on us by the West, as Merkel tried to do on 2 occasions. We're not going to accept that and go into a ceasefire, and then we're going to have to spend more blood, and we're going to have to spend that blood all over again 3 years hence. And we're not going to do it. We have to finish this, do the job, and finish with it. That's their opinion. That's how they see it there. So I don't think there's pressure. He has a sort of 88% approval rating, certainly over 80%. And I don't think that's false. Most people understand that he's playing a complex game, but they don't. They're not prepared to have another deceit put on them by the West.
Trump's reaction to this missile. I'll read just a few of his comments. He said that they're not playing games with us. These are direct quotes. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time. And he said further, we don't need to go 8,000 miles to do so, or 8,000 kilometers, referring to the nuclear submarine threat, which we've talked about on the show together. Alastair claiming that there are U.S. nuclear submarines off the coast of Russia. And he, of course, went on to mock Putin. He said, a war that should have taken 1 week now has taken into a 4th year, soon a 4th year. That's what Putin ought to do instead of testing missiles. There is this downplaying of everything that Russia does on the battlefield, but in particular, this missile technology, which seems to be perhaps a mistake, or maybe it's an intentional one. What's your thoughts?
Well, the first thing is, this misses the whole point, because, of course, those submarines would be firing Tomahawks. That's what those Aegis submarines are equipped with, is Tomahawk missiles. And the whole point of this was Putin, a message to Trump, that you cross, an irretrievable red line once you start firing Tomahawk missiles deep into Russian. That completely changes the whole possibilities for any engagement between Russia and America. And he said that very categorically. So it doesn't matter where America fires its Tomahawks from, whether it fires them from Poland or Romania or somewhere else, or from a submarine. The point is, Tomahawks will actually destroy any possibility for a if you like, political solution between Russia. Now, the other point, of course, which he's trying to obfuscate, understandably obfuscate, because it's somewhat embarrassing to the United States. No other state has got, if you like, a nuclear-based power system, propulsion for missiles at all. It's the first that has been done. And this means it could circle the globe and can just sit and loiter and then move in from any direction, north, south, east to west. It is a game changer, because it's unlikely America really has any missiles that would be able to destroy this missile. It is a game changer. And all this fluff about saying, well, we can put missiles, off this. but they're just Tomahawk missiles. The whole point was that Putin said, you do this, and then we're in a different game. And it's going to be a very dangerous game. So don't do it. And by the way, you think the Tomahawks have leverage? They don't. I have better leverage with this missile that you're showing on the screen now. So let's not go down that road. I don't think Putin has any desire to go down the road, but he wanted to make the point very clearly, because he does have worries. And this was clear from Dmitriev, who came back and he said, there are attempts to block the flow of information to the US leadership in Washington regarding the situation in Ukraine and Russia. I don't know that it's completely blocked, but it's certainly at odds that you have, on the one hand, the CIA saying that they believe that Putin is interested in a political solution. Not necessarily, not a ceasefire, but it is interested in talking and having a political discussion with the United States, if not about Ukraine, but more widely about things like nuclear weapons and START treaties and so on like this. And then the State Department, Rubio's department, and there's been a number of sackings of the researchers there, suggests that Putin is deceptive and this is not true. He's no interest and has no desire to have a political discussion. They couch that in terms of it being based on agreement to freeze a conflict on the lines of the present. Lines of conflict. And in that sense, it's real, it's true, but it's not true at all that Putin does not want to have he said time and time again, he's open to diplomacy. But I do think we're in a new era now. It's a different era. What's the point of talking to Trump if he hasn't got agency, if he can't commit the United States to whatever is proposed, because he's not going to be allowed to? I mean, what's the point of taking this taking this further?